Cool. So we are live, and I have the pleasure of, being with Frenetik Void today, which is super exciting. I think I've told them before that I'm very nervous, so hang in there with me. Hey, Frenetik, it's great to have you on.
The pleasure is mine. Thanks, Micol. And thanks for Colborn for having me also.
And Colborn, I have my favorite human co-hosting with me, so I'm super happy.
Always a pleasure, Micol and Frenetik. Thank you, man.
All right.
Grab a glass of water.
Okay, so I think I'd love to start, okay, so I get a bit of context. Like, I think, when I first kind of started vertical crypto art, I remember so clearly seeing, your artwork and being like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is insane. And, that is kind of like how I discovered you, like, and constant, like, I've never spoken to you. Like, this is the first time we actually like connect. So it's always been very much looking at what you do as a creator and like as an artist, and how you push so many boundaries. Like, I think I said it before, like when I introduced what the live stream today, like it's pretty incredible. So I'd love to start from the beginning, like, what is Frenetik Void? And like, maybe let's start with that.
Okay, that's an excellent question. I don't know, but no, really, like I try to divide. Like nowadays, it may sound kind of crazy, but I try to divide my personality like in different personalities. Like when I see Frenetik's work, sometimes like I don't feel it's mine. I don't know if I'm explaining correctly, but in my work process, like I kind of try to let loose as much as possible my consciousness. So sometimes it's not me. Like I'm not Frenetik now. Like in this precise moment. Like I think there's a moment in creation when, for me in particular, like I feel like another. So I don't know. That's for starters. Like I try to keep that divided, because if not, I would go crazy if I'm all day like in that state and in that mood. So now I'm like just a face, Franco. You can call me, um, and yeah. So when it all started, um, I guess when I've always had like this relationship with technology and with the computers. Like I've always felt really connected, and I've always felt like a way of expressing uh, with tech in particular. Um, I've always loved games and playing games, and inside those games, I've always liked to perform my own narrative, like, or put my subjectivity into those games, like editing and changing the way the story was told inside the game, like to fulfill my own fantasies inside the game. And I guess that's the beginning of where I started like feeling a power of changing something for me in first instance, like trying to communicate something to the outside via technology or um, you know uh, digital art, as it's called. So yeah, um, and that's like when I recall my youth, but like 6 years ago, more or less, I had this Kinect, Kinect is it's like a hardware. It was developed by Microsoft to scan, infrared the body, and then with movements, play games with the Xbox and everything. I didn't use it for that. I just like um, downloaded a program that you could scan yourself, and then it was just that, like, I saw my scan in the computer, and I felt like this mirrorish connection with my digital self. And I guess that's when it started, like that's the first piece. I guess then I retouched the scan. I made it like feel as much me as possible in that moment. And that was the moment in which I felt like I don't know, yeah, this mirrorish connection with computers and digital art. And I saw myself um, in there, inside the virtual realm. So I guess that was my first step into it, and it was like, I don't know, 5 6 years ago. But I'm speaking like consciously, like it was when I made when I made conscious the fact that I was expressing myself there. Before that, I didn't really know, you know. And then I never stopped. Like I started learning new techniques, new stuff, um, to express myself better. Life passed, my situations passed, my everything passes, and I just feel and then try to live it there, like. And it's more like something it started as a way of leaving something that I really needed to live there, like it really helped me get through my life, and it really helps me. uh but I guess that period was, I don't know, a bit tougher, like the years in which you're trying to look for your identity, like the uh I don't know, the adolescent, mind that's trying to like be someone, and you
Mhm.
really don't know who you are too well. That was like the period in which my production was the most, like, I don't know, fastest, or I needed to express more because I needed to find myself somewhere, So yeah, I guess that's a bit of who I am.
Look, it's crazy, and I don't even know where to begin to break this down. But I think like the concept of, we exist in our physical bodies, right? But when we present ourselves with a mirror, we begin to
Yeah.
project like our subconscious onto this image of like who we are. And like they always say to go into the mirror and like ask yourself. And obviously what I think Frenetic does so well is or they, or whatever Frenetic is, it's like it's this extension of the duality, right? It's the chaos and the nothingness, and it's coming together in a digital expressive form around who we are and the questions we can pose to ourselves. Obviously, there's a ton of play with like mirrors and shadows and uh, disambiguated forms. Uh, I it's almost like an unspeakable connection that I experience when I see the artwork, because again, what is art if not a mirror to push us beyond our conceptions of who we are and ourselves?
Word. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes you just can't explain it like literally, and it happens a lot. Well, in my case in particular, it happens to me a lot with emotions. I can't really like speak them, I have like this barrier of problems sometimes, like, to express what I'm feeling. And it was so natural, and it came out so easily in first hands, like trying to put it in an image, like images that really like are just expressions of emotions that's happening in that precise moment, and like came down, I don't know, from somewhere, or came up from somewhere. So it's just that, I don't really like it happens to me a lot that a lot of people like ask me about particular artworks, and we can talk about particular artworks. Um, and I remember more like the moment when I did that, perhaps, and what I was feeling, but I can't explain it, you know. And many times, what happens to me is that I don't design the artwork beforehand. I never did. Like it's just something that comes out, and when it comes out, like when I look at finished and when I feel it's finished, there I understand what's happening, perhaps, or perhaps sometime later, like I can return to that artwork and that period of my life and like comprehend more about myself and what I was doing. But it's very like subjective, you know. And I think, um, or what moves me, or what I see in others when they tell about their story, their narrative, and put their own subjectivity in their work, it's when I most feel connected with the work, because you can relate. You know, when you see truth somewhere, or when you feel truth somewhere, it's easier to connect. At least for me, you know. But that's what I try to do, to always keep honest and true to myself. It's difficult, and sometimes I feel like I copy myself. It's like everyone does that, you know. We all do it all the time. Like copy is also a reassurance sometimes, you know. Like the repetition isn't bad sometimes, you know. But um, when you're, it's like just letting flow at the end, because when you're feeling the same, perhaps you're going to make something similar. But when your life is changing, or you're going through another period of life, or you're starting to understand other things, or to look at other things, your taste changes and everything. You just do something different. So it's it's difficult to let go sometimes and just do, you know. uh, and that's what I'm trying to focus my life on, you know. I don't know, sometimes it works, sometimes not, but yeah, that's where I try to go.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think I'm listening. You know, I'm just listening at this moment. Like I feel like it's there's a lot there. Like I almost like I almost like for me now this is like a discovery. Like I have to be totally honest, because like now that I'm seeing you, like
Yeah,
with your like identity, like real identity, and I'm looking at your artwork, there's like there's like a very kind of reflection of that. Like I can see it so clearly, but it's something that is very personal, like if you see it from the
yeah,
outside, like you would never almost imagine that. Like now that I'm talking to, like, I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying. Like I it's just something that clicked. Like I was just on your super rare profile, and I was like, okay, this is him. Like this is his self-reflection, almost like many self-reflections maybe.
yeah, yeah.
and I don't know even if it like has to make sense. I think at least
Totally.
for my journey in crypto art, it's been a process of just letting go, right? Like more and more letting go
Yeah,
and giving it to also like other people to interpret it and take what they will from it. Like you cannot, there is no almost control in crypto art. There's just like the birth, there's the genesis, and then everything continues to live a life very independent. And maybe this is like broadly what crypto art is trying to do, is accelerate past the point of control, or like tightly wound narratives or structures that are ingrained and cemented into the world that is more free form and flowing and open, where we don't feel like a preconceived judgment of what should be. It's just a presentation to the world, and you kind of let the world kind of comment and curate, instead of trying to control that yourself, if that makes any sense.
yeah, totally, totally. Um, Yeah, I think we tend to try to control things a bit too much. Maybe because structure makes us feel safe sometimes, and you know, there's a lot of, like, I always tie this to definitions. I don't like too much definitions of things. Like, for example, the classic one is I'm getting myself into a place where I don't want to get in, but like the classic definition of crypto art, what is crypto art, and how do you define it, and everything. But sometimes, like, for me, it's just too difficult. You end up like in loopholes of language, and I don't like them very much. Like, uh, I try to reduce or simplify things as much as possible, and say, okay, this is art for me, perhaps for another one it isn't. Each one has its perspective, and when you try to perhaps structure things, it's difficult. But in the end, we all need it. Like, chaos is inevitable, and it's always flowing. But with the thing is, okay, now I've got an idea. Like, people perhaps tend to try to control things, um, without the proper history, or and I think that's where Mocha, it's now like in a good spot of trying to tell the story how it happened, like, because it happens a lot in a lot of like different narratives and stories, that, like, there are people who just shouted things, like, and there are people like that live through them and just live through them. And I think, like, telling the story from the most objectivity, I think it's almost impossible. But from an honest and true point of view, like, I think that's something that the space, or the history of the space, needs now more than ever. And we're like in the same page with crypto art, also, like, trying to um, create and write down the history of how things were made, like, with a chronic view, or and also, like, obviously putting our point of view of today, that tomorrow can be another one. That's why I like to see as a fluid entity, and I like to see things as fluid, but it's very important, like, to, you know I don't know, try to express things with the most honest as possible. I don't know. I turned into a spiral right now, but I think what you guys in Mocha are doing is great now. How you change over the period of time, and what you're doing now, I think is very valuable. Like, um, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to do the same, and we're trying to do the same with crypto. Like, um, just trying to tell the story from another point of view. Like, but sometimes uh, it's it's a bit more difficult to be told, because when things are deep and profound, they take more time, perhaps, to be told, and they need that time, like, to think about it, and to um, feel what happened. Like, sometimes we tend to shout at things, like we all do, um, in the moment, and that just, like, ends up on top of what happened. And yeah, I don't like when that happens. Like, I think it's important to slowly start telling the story of what we're doing here, and just let it flow. Um, what do you
It's
think, Colborn?
Yeah, it's like all things. There's periods to sit back and create and to be very forward, but you
Yeah,
can't do this forever. There's times when you have to go back and you have to look and you have to examine. And I think we did reach like a critical juncture where people were taking and perhaps like perverting the narrative and bringing false narratives into our community and introducing false idols, false gods, like whatever it is, that wasn't speaking to the truth here. And it is obviously entirely subjective.
Obviously.
Yeah, but there's something within crypto that speaks to community and community values, and we're seeing more and more the ability to, I think of it as like the global internet village, right? Where we strip away the self identifiers, whether it's like physicality, race, gender, sex, creed, whatever these things are, and you can be like online and anonymous, and you can be valued through your outputs and your creation without it being attached to personal identity. And then you can have choices to give these back to communities, and it's all still very nascent, primordial, but like the way DAOs are emerging and the way people are connecting, and maybe for like the first time, sure, it can like relate to money and investments, but it's more about the ideas that we hold and the future that we want to see. And to, I don't, again, like big dualities in your work, the big dualities of the extremes, to be both a historical, like, and to also be like forward looking and an innovation lab and like speak to best practices. How do you balance this? And it's nothing anybody can do on their own, right? So like you find, you know, people who care and share big vision, and they don't have to be like your neighbors, or for me, like the people in New York City or the people in London or Buenos Aires.
True.
Yeah, although there is such like power in crypto Argentina as a foreteller of like what crypto art and what it is. And I struggle with these things, and I struggle to find like the language to communicate these things, but you can see it in the art that is being produced here. And I think you can see it in the way that like you all are working together and sharing and learning from one another and mentoring. And if that is just like a microcosm of what we can do on a more macro scale, it's about like wading into the dark together, having the tools to effectuate exponential learning, not trying to like take ownership over any one thing, but to be inspired and to feed these like high intensity feedback loops where everybody is coming to higher and greater and mutual realizations.
Totally. Yeah, that last part is very important. Also, like with the arms open, you know, like try to. It's difficult also, like how much you open your arms, because sometimes it's too much to handle. You know, like the structures need to like perform also, and then like to have like the capacity of like, I don't know, like invite or just like, you know, that happens. I'm not saying like it's not also like an utopic everyone, because it is, but and I would love that, but it just, you know, like the context will also decide, you know. It's just that. So yeah, I'm very on the same page as you, Colborn, now. So I'm very happy of everything that's happening here, you know, and around the world. And you know, I try to stay in that view and in that narrative, you know. So yeah.
I think there's actually a really interesting connection here, because I think something that like Colborn you did with Mocha is you didn't really speak about the history. the history and like the context has been spoken to by the artist and the artwork without any words, really. Like there was never a wording of such, like almost like a saying of this is what happens. It's just manifested by what the artwork is and what the artists have made. And it's kind of very similar to, or at least from what I can see, like very similar to what you have done, Frenetik, like as well, that like there's not much spoken. Like it's more letting it speak for itself without having to, as you were saying, like shout it out. Like it's very subtle, but it's there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, sometimes being too quiet also takes its toll, but yeah, like in my case in particular, I try, like when it's about me or Frenetik or something that personal, I like to speak with what I do, with what I do best. That's my, or what I don't know if what I do best, but yeah, with what I do, that's my art, and I just leave it there, you know. So that's my way of expressing my point of view. So yeah, I think there's something there in what's there, but it's not so. It's like more for you to fill that space, perhaps. It's an invitation also, because perhaps sometimes when you structure things or say things, well, you're open in conversations, but sometimes you're also imposing like something, and it's just like the sweet balance between those two things, I guess. Imposing and leaving things open, like for another one to fill in the void. When you expose a void, you expose emptiness, and within that emptiness, like perhaps people feel more. Some people like feel like, I guess, like, okay, there's nothing there, or perhaps there's too much nothingness there for me to put myself to pour myself into that. But it's all a matter of I guess daring to express yourself, or daring to trust yourself and your way of your way of thinking. Yeah, like it, that's like a lot, like to trust you and to have confidence in what you think and what you feel also, but and putting that somewhere else, like expressing it to the outside. It's really hard. So not only for creators that like do that and just express, but for someone who's on the other side, like to put yourself into a piece, or like to see art or to feel art. Like the art happens when the one on the outside like speaks with something that she never saw and like feels connected to, and that connection, I think, it's a possible definition of art. What happens when the viewer like feels something, feels connected, feels inside that, or just feels outside but understands it, or not understand it, but yeah, it's that what we can, like, we can go and look to look. It's just unexplainable, but I love that territory. Not for the language, I like talking a lot about it, but to be in the creative part of it and the process, yeah, I like it. I'm gonna go grab a glass of water.
Yeah, I love this hat, right? I love this hat. It's just, I'm not a religious person, but I love like the idea of like you have the thought almost, right? And it's like protected by the prayer that is the intention for the creation that comes generally from your head, from your mind. Um, you can't control it. It's almost like a submission to what will and what will be. You can control your intent. You can control perhaps like a bit of the expression, but I generally believe that like no work in and of itself is finished. It's generally finished by the viewer, right? And the conversation that is elicited from the gaze and from the eyes and from the translation of like what is in here through the medium to the way it's viewed and perceived. Uh, and it doesn't even need to be a conversation that's had in words. Like the energy transmission is still happening. Um, and just to be able to access like pockets of expression in regions so distant and far from me as Buenos Aires, and to have it happen at light speed, right? The speed of the internet, truly light speed. Um, there's immutable connections that I feel like all over the world, and how it shapes and changes me into a person beyond like the body and the place and the things is, I don't want to call it like spiritual destiny, but it just speaks to the fact that like we are more than like what we think we are or might see ourselves to be.
Yeah.
It's all madness. It's all madness.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Look, here are some of the Crypto Arc team. I don't know.
Hey.
Hola,
Julian,
Julian, Triangle.
Arthur, Lulu, Big Sun.
Hi.
They're all here eating while I'm talking, and I look at the food desperate.
I love this.
Yeah.
Like, I think, something that is, I mean, for me, for sure, but it's like something that is truly, very unique about this whole, whatever, crypto art, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's this sense of like community, like a lot of people come together not knowing who they are really. Like, they don't really know anything about each other. They have like maybe one thing, whether it's like artwork, whether it's like a comment, whether it's like a thought, like something that sparks a connection, and with no preconception, with no pre-ideas of what you would normally have, of seeing someone, of looking at someone, of knowing, where they come from, of like even, having like that feeling of, physicality that you usually have when you meet someone. You have, some form of something, right? Like here, it's all those boundaries are nothing. You just have that one connection, and that's, how it starts. And it's crazy, it's crazy special. Like it's yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's beautiful because, yeah, I always tell like people like when this all started, like it was lockdown here. I guess when Qatar started and the community started, it was still locked down, and I think that's also like a special context in which we were all like uh, outside the sphere of physicality, and like when people needs that contact with others, like we need others, like to be. So yeah, I always tell people like in lockdown and in quarantine, it was like the period of my life in which most friends I did. That's like incredible because all this happened like um, it started virtual, but we were all like in a very similar page, like um, we didn't know what the fuck was going on in the world, and here, and we were all at home, in our virtual realms in which some of us or many of us feel comfortable. And that first spark of interaction of, okay, we're in this together, and it's happening, like it's all happening like very similar to all of us, just unite us into what we are now. And that's really like what I most treasure of all this, like the union of minds and people and souls. I don't know if there's something greater than that, um, like the feeling of not being alone and just sharing things. It's like I think that's the way. So yeah, I just like I feel very 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 happy with what's happening here and what's happened, and I know this it's happening and will happen in other spheres or part of the world. It just has no boundaries. Perhaps it started like here, like Australia, and it was just like the easier way to interact with people because they're closer to you in a way. Um, but my idea or my view or my way of seeing things is that it's not only like we don't have to limit ourselves to countries or to these types of spheres also, but maybe in first instance, yes, because as I said, you can't englobe everything like all the time. But things keep evolving, and more. Well, this is opening the sphere also, opening the sphere of interactions, and getting to know people from the other side of the world and communicating and creating things together. Um, and now we're talking like this, but tomorrow perhaps we're talking with a beer in our hands, and just talking normally. So I think that's very very valuable, and I'm very grateful for that, and that happened because of the community that formed in the space, and the need of everyone of needing others, and growing with others and sharing. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's a lot here, but like when I go back and think about like my journey of self, right? When I was 18 years old, I went to New York City to find myself, and I thought like within the noise, within the like the bustle, the experience, the seeing, I would be able to like amalgamate a sense of self out of all of this chaos. And to a certain extent, I saw more and I experienced more than I could have ever imagined in the world. But at some point, like all the energy, all the confusion, all it is it's like deleterious to the identity of one, perhaps. And so I went and I retreated to the forest to again like try and find one. And the interesting thing, of course, with like coronavirus and the pandemic and lockdown is that suddenly everybody was forced to go back in and try and like find one. And when you can find one and you can find another one, well, you begin to like start over and make two, and two becomes four, and like but in
Like the virus, like the inverse virus.
Crypto art is a virus, but and people are like finding and discovering different facets of themselves, and the chaos of it all does remind me of like being in the city. But like environment is so important, and like the environment you choose to put yourself in, and suddenly we have like shared internet space, and we can design and like redefine the environments, and whether that is pushing us into VR or whatever the conception of the digital world is. And all to kind of like relate it back to Frenetik's work, you in the beginning you dealt a lot with like bodies and form and portraits, and I have seen, at least lately on the pieces that you've been putting out, they've been more perhaps like landscapes and figures in context. And maybe this is just, I don't know if it's intentional, if who knows, whatever, but to say and to see like the expansion of the form into the context of the environment, it represents growth. And I think, whereas in the beginning, the early stages of crypto art, it was very like one-on-one, direct artist-collector relationships, these conversations. We're seeing more organizations, and I really think of it as like primordial ooze, like the one cell dividing into two, becoming, and it's organic in a very inorganic and unnatural context. But
Yeah,
we are seeing evolution, and we are seeing growth, and for me that's very exciting.
like in like the conception in chaos, like the chaos bringing like new life, and that's really like a nice way to look at it in all the different points of view that just clash together, and all the different like things that clash forcefully into this structure, um, is building like new like microorganisms, or I don't know what you want to call it. And yeah, I also love seeing that, man. Like it's incredible. And yeah, in relation to my work, I think it's definitely changing. Like, um, one thing that's very clear is that at the beginning I used a lot of bodies, because it was easier to me, like to use these virtual mannequins, virtual bodies, like that are particularly empty, and give that space to the to one that to the viewer, of filling that void inside, like that body, of filling those empty shells, as I like to call them. And then I started like feeling like the body wasn't I don't know. I don't know if it wasn't enough or just wasn't representing what I wanted. And now I always like have something there, because it's natural to me in my work, and it's easier for me to feel related. But um, I started like doing these abstract forms that then came from the bodies, I like from the union of bodies. I use some programs and plugins to extract like some kind of liquid from the meshes of the body, and that like for example, let's see if we go like to the upper end of the condom. That's a piece, like it's
This one.
below, the a bit below, like, see, or yeah, below that one too, but below, down, down, that one, the third one. No,
Que me
like
diga. No.
uh, up there, the offering.
Yeah.
That was a complex piece, but yeah, like in the offering, like that figure, like that's on like the humanoid that has some kind of my face. I made a scan and put it there. Um, the figure that's like uh on the back of the piece. Um, it's just like it also comes from body, like I merge these bodies, and as I said, extract the liquid from the meshes, and like create this kind of still hollow, bodiless, at the same time representing like the union uh, of empty bodies into something solid, so yeah, I like working a lot with those kind of things. Um, lately I've been like more like into glitch. I've always liked like uh, glitch art and everything. Like when I was younger, I did a lot with my cell phone. Like I just destroyed images, and I liked that a lot. So I'm trying to bring that experience again. Um, so yeah, it's like in my narrative, in my work in particular, I think it's just I try to create my own tools. Although it's obviously impossible. Like I've used different programs that obviously limit us a lot, but I've never I've never been a technical guy. Like I've never like studied a lot those programs like to make something, because I like to use the program, and maybe if you study from someone that program, then the programs start using you, and maybe you end up uh, in a kind of something that's not so yours. And I've always liked to experiment a lot with this program, so that's something I'm like I remark perhaps of myself, that I always try to like find some changes in the program, or try to break the programs into making something new, um, and that ends up like bringing new stuff, to the table. That's just,
It's it's funny that we ended up here. Micol, will you go into the bidding history of this piece?
oh, you're going to talk about the war?
I'm not going to. I'm not going to. Just only to say that this was like the frenetic void piece that I fell in love with, right? This was the one. And, I was just like putting structured bids in. We finally talked. And this was like just, I'm not really one that is very aggressive in reaching out to artists. I'd rather just say what I want to say with the bids. But, yeah, when this piece closed, I was having just like the most miserable and awful day of my life. It was so bad. I remember my car broke down and I was stranded between like New York and Massachusetts on the side of the highway, and being like, oh my God, my car is like on fire. And I had like, there's no recourse. And of course, like you just have to like give these things up. But this was the one, this piece particular. And then the other like huge moment for me was when I saw Corsair in 3D, when Super Rare first allowed you to upload those files. And I went in, and there was this artwork in this show, and I don't know what texture you used, but it was capturing and reflecting the light of these two like intermingled and entwined bodies. And I came out of that show, I'm like, this artwork is priceless. Like, if this is not the first piece of crypto art that sells for $1 million, like, I will be shocked. And to continue to like see this piece in all the forms that it takes, we brought it into Somnium Space. I've like brought it into AR. I've hung it over the Hudson River and seen like the sunlight reflect on it. It's just magnificent. And I am somebody who is generally like, well, I'll just say it, like tortured in the relationships that I keep. And the union here, and the expression, and like the giving of the hands and the intertwining of the hands and the bodies, it's priceless. It's priceless work.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that you feel that way. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. As I told before, this piece in particular was just like, I don't know. It came out also so naturally. I first designed it for like, because it was in no in the first. I use like these bodies and mannequins to just. I like putting them like on top of each other, and try to generate this new being. Like the the union of these two humanoids then creates some kind of uh, union that's a new one. And maybe in that way it's easier to express sometimes, or in this case in particular, the feeling of being two, or like that Cosette is like cooperatively cooperatively being, like being. And also coser of it's a way of saying like knitting in Spanish, like when you knit. So and the faces are there like knitted. So um, yeah, I mean relationships were are and for me were very formative for my emotional life. And that period of time particularly, I've I've got inspired greatly by uh, the pains and suffering, and also the beauty of sharing love, particularly with someone. Um, so I don't know. I have like this kind of romantic vibe in
Yeah.
in some of my in some of my pieces, especially in that period of time. Now I'm not so. My latest pieces, I must say, are not so romantic. Uh, but yeah, I think like it was like more caring. Like in that period of time, I saw everything like uh, really like high up. Like I tried to see the beauty in tragedy. And I was like it's kind of romanticized being perhaps. Now I'm a bit more like or this period of time I'm trying to go deep into uh, the flesh of things. I don't know how to say like the mechanics of things, of how things are done or made, or the um I'm trying to get into that. Um, putting a bit aside this kind of romantic vibe.
Did you write this description?
I wrote it with a friend. Yeah.
It's
Like
fucking
Micol.
poetry, man. It's
Yeah.
it's poetry.
Yeah. Well, it's I've got to give credit to Santiago. That's a friend of mine. That's really a great writer. He doesn't write like a lot, like for anybody else. Like he writes a lot to himself also, but he's a really good friend of mine, and I asked him to like uh, to share this with me, like, and he wrote. For a couple of my pieces, and we wrote together. Sometimes I write and I send it to him. Sometimes he writes and he sends it to me. I don't like to write so much for others, more for myself, but sometimes the pieces like I just lie to myself until it's only for myself, and I write. Um, and yeah, that text is it's really fire.
Really fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are also other texts like in Desolation, like in some of my first make, but there are Maker's Place, I think. So in some of my Maker's Place says pieces. There are more texts by uh, or co-written with Santiago. Um, but yeah. Now I'm more not into those kind of text, like my latest pieces that don't have so much description, or just like enneagrams are like getting into symbols and language, and um, I like the path of trying to understand something, not only just with the text, but going intra text and trying to figure out for yourself what's the meaning behind that. I'm working on something also with like symbols and some symbols of my own, like to express things, and like someone to code, like for the viewer not only to see but to try to decode what's the meaning behind that. And I think that's like some kind of game or something I enjoy doing for myself also. Like I like when a piece or something like defies me to think a bit more than just like letting it pass, you know. So you know, it also comes with the crypto uh, space. I think there's like a texture and something in the cryptic that's now like turning my eye to, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, what cannot be said perhaps, or what's impossible to say, or what's just like a blubbering that you can't understand, but also in the blubbering there's a texture and a feeling, and there's something said, you know. uh Perhaps not with normal language, you know, but noises, or yeah, you know, noise.
Yeah.
I think maybe it would be great to like close on also, you know, crypto arc and what it is, like, you know, a general bit of a like a touch on this collective and what it means for you specifically and what it is, and also, you know, what you're doing, because I know there's like a lot of things that are happening within, you know, your collective. And yeah, it'll be nice to maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So yeah, we're making an exhibition now on the Central Land, and on a building that two of our collective artists have done. That's incredible. The building that those are Chromatica and Mar de Formas, and yeah, it's an exhibition like where we're like showing. There's no real theme behind it. It's just like showing what we're up to, you know, or showing what we've done. It's more like a retrospective, perhaps, that we're doing with Mocha also. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've talked about crypto art during this interview, but um, I think the most important thing here is like showing what we are and showing that we're here, and we've built this like all this time has like we've been really building this community, you know, and it's very solid, and we're like a group of artists and people that are really interested in building community and keep building stuff in community. So it's just like a way of saying, you know, we're here, this is our, we're hearing, and we're here. This is our story. And you know, just before this interview, we were speaking with an Argentine philosopher. We had a meeting with him, and we're like, uh, how do you say, like manufacturing the idea of writing some kind of book or text about uh, what happened and what's happening now, um, in the space, or what we did here, and the possibilities this community is opening up for us, and this space is opening to us and for others, you know. So um, we're in that period of time, I guess, like getting things together, you know, what happened, and try to lay it on the table and try to like tell the story the way we want to tell it, and what happened really truly, you know, because it was all so fast, all happened so fast. Like this last year was insane, it was really insane. So uh, we're trying to get things together and like just leave something clear, um, for others to know what's happening here, you know. I think like Colborn is in a similar path. I don't know if with text, or like we're like getting things together, you know. So yeah, that's what this exhibitions are about, like showing us ourselves to the world, maybe. Um, yeah, saying hello. You know, I guess it's more of that.
It's so two things. One, that I have to say that Chromatica was the first artist I ever interviewed ever with vertical crypto art ever. Like, she was the first artist, apart from the fact that she's amazing and a great architect and a great artist, and she was like the first person, not even, like, even just person who I spoke to, and like we did, I did my first kind of like video back in, I think it was like September or November last year, I can't remember. So I think, when I remember, like, at that time, like, everyone I spoke to literally was like Argentinian, and I kept thinking in my mind, like, everybody's from Argentina, like, obviously there's something there.
Yes, we're allowed
And then
to.
it kind of, got diluted, obviously, like with, a lot of things. And I think, it's important, as you said, and we've been saying, and with Mocha and what you guys, in CryptoArc are doing, like, to kind of strip it back, not without shouting, not without, being anyway, but just showing, right? Like, this has happened. This is part of the history. This is important. So yeah.
Yeah. So that's that. I'm very happy for what's happening here, and also like the global vibe I feel around all this rewriting, or this recapturing of what happened. I think it's a good time for that.
100%.
I would just encourage everybody out there, accept the invitation, right? Accept the invitation, show up. You may not understand what you see. Hopefully one day you will. And if you don't understand, it doesn't matter. But show up, say yes, and come see what these artists are up to, because it really is. It's just like heart and soul of crypto art, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, to Colborn, to Frenetik. Like, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. It was great, really.
Thank you, guys. Really a pleasure. I'm gonna go eat now.
Yeah. Enjoy it, and say hello to everyone else.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.